Hello everyone, this is Teacher Donna. Today we're going to discuss IELTS Writing Task 1, which is comparing sets of data. Alright, so this exam skill focus for this unit is to compare sets of data, analyze data, use comparisons with more, fewer, less, and then, use linking words and phrases, and write a summary of the information shown in the figure by selecting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So, what exactly is comparison and contrast or comparing data in sets? This is another form of data used in writing task 1. As you remember in our previous lesson, we discussed writing task 1 about trends. Data in sets means when the horizontal axis information in a bar chart or table is expressed in groups of ideas. If you remember, in writing trends, the important thing there is change over time. Whereas in comparison and contrast or comparing sets of data, we do not have change over time. We have groups of ideas. When writing your summary, you have to look for key similarities and differences between the categories. You should then compare and contrast these pieces of information. Your summary answer must contain similarities and differences of the main features of the information presented in the figure or in the chart or in the graph. And the important thing is you should be able to use the language of comparison and contrast. All right, so let's take a look at this sample table. What percentage of 15-year-olds did not get enough sleep? All right, so what exactly can you see in this table? Okay, so what does the title tell you? Let's take a look at the table again. So the title is Amount of Sleep for Secondary School Students. So it tells us the amount of sleep for secondary school students. How many groups of people are there? Let's go back. So how many groups of people? So here you can see 12-year-old boys, 12-year-old girls, 15-year-old boys, and 15-year-old girls. So how many groups of people do we have? We actually have four. Next, in what ways are the groups of people different? So how are they different? So they are different in the amount of sleep. Okay, and these are the range of sleep that they get every night. What does the sign before 3 hours mean? Okay, so 3 hours is here, and this is the sign. So let's go back to our maths class. This sign represents what? Okay, it means less than. All right, so less than 3 hours. So it means that the data here shows the amount of sleep of about less than 3 hours. Is the sign before 8.5 hours the same? All right, so is it the same? No, it's not. So if this is less than, this is greater than. So it means greater than 8.5 hours of sleep. Now, based on the table, which sentences are true or false? And let's correct the false sentences. So take a look at the sentences first. Now, here's the graph again. So let's go back and let's answer. So the first one, 12-year-olds sleep less than 15-year-olds. Is it true or false? All right, so it is false. Why? Because 12-year-olds sleep more than 15-year-olds. Number two, not many students sleep fewer than 3 hours per night. Okay, so this is fewer than or less than 3 hours per night. So the answer is true. Number three, many 15-year-olds have more sleep than 12-year-olds. So 15 and 12. Look at 8 hours, more than 8.5 hours, because as you know, the recommended number of hours of sleep that we need is 8 hours. So if you take a look, all right, do 15-year-olds sleep more than 12-year-olds? The answer is false. Why? Because many 15-year-olds have less sleep than 12-year-olds. And the last one, girls have more sleep than boys. All right, so girls, boys, girls and boys. So the answer is false because girls have less sleep than boys. All right. So let's take a look at the grammar focus comparisons with more, fewer, less, and than. So which sentences in the exercise that we did earlier give examples of more, less, or fewer used immediately before a noun? Okay. And those who used more than, less than, or fewer than immediately after a verb. All right. So here's the answer. So number one, we have verb. Okay. Number two, we have here verb. Number three, we have here sleep as a noun. We have here number four, we have here more, and then sleep as a noun as well. Let's move on to adding more and or than to the sentences. Now I want you to do this activity. Add more and or than. So you can add more or than or more and than to the sentences below. I'll give you time to answer this and then I'll show you the answers after this slide. So you may pause your video while writing your answers. Here are the answers. More exercises. And here are the answers for those exercises. All right. So I mentioned to you earlier that it is important to use the language of comparison and contrast when you are answering this type of test in task 1. Now, to practice that, put these words and phrases into the correct columns on the table on the next slide. So I'm going to show it to you first. All right. So we have here describing similar ideas. We have describing different ideas, describing additional ideas. Okay, we have describing a whole table or chart. We have giving details and giving final comments. So please take note of these information and then I'll go back and show you the words again so you can write your answers down on the These are the words. Okay, so among these words, which do you think show describing similar ideas? So which words can you use to describe similar ideas? All right, we have similarly, we have also, and we have likewise. Now, what about describing different ideas? We have in contrast, we have by comparison, and we have on the other hand. Okay, guys, take note. It's on the other hand, not on another hand. All right, this is actually a common mistake. Next, describing additional ideas. We have also describing a whole table or chart. We have in general, giving details. All right, we have to be specific and giving final comments. We have in conclusion. All right, actually, in writing task one of IELTS academic writing, it is not necessary that you have a conclusion because you already have the general idea. You already presented the general idea at the beginning of your paragraph. So the conclusion is not really necessary. All right. So please do this activity. Complete the paragraph with the words or phrases from the table that you created from the previous slide. So please pause this video while you are answering, and then I'll show you the answers after this slide. Okay, so here's the answer. Let me just read it for you. In general, the table shows that 12-year-old students sleep more than 15-year-old students. To be specific, almost 80% of 12-year-olds have more than 8 hours sleep, whereas only 65% of 15-year-olds have more than 8 hours sleep. In contrast, there are 12% more 15-year-olds who sleep for just 6 to 7 hours than 12-year-olds in that category. Similarly, there are slightly more 15-year-olds who sleep for 4 to 5 hours than 12-year-olds. But overall, totals in both groups are very small. Also, it should be noted that male students do not sleep more than female students. In conclusion, although younger students sleep more than older students, many students of both ages are not getting the recommended hours of sleep. All right, so for this summary of writing task one, these are the things that you have to know and you have to do before you start writing. So the first thing is look at the key information in the graph. All right, so here's a sample graph. What key information can you find in this graph? All right, so first take a look at the title. Okay, so we have here number and age of members of clubs at a university, 2015-2016. So look at the vertical axis. So what information do you have on your vertical axis? This is what? Okay, it's showing, it's showing the number of members. Okay, what about on the vertical axis? We have your hiking, film, drama, arts and crafts, human rights, and other. So what are these? These are the clubs, all right? The different clubs. What about the key? This is the key, all right? So we actually have two things here. We have 18 to 25 years old, showing the green bars, and then we have 26 to 35 years old, showing the blue bars. All right. Next, identify the general idea. So how are we supposed to identify the general idea? You have to look the key and point of comparison. Okay, so this is the key, and where's the point of comparison? So this is our point of comparison. All right, so we are actually comparing the different clubs. Okay, so the members of each age range on the different clubs. So what is the general trend? How are you supposed to look for the general trend? Okay, so you have to look which is more, which is less, which has the most number. So you have to take a look at that. It's pretty obvious that you have more of these green bars more than the blue bars in most of the clubs. So in drama, you have more 18 to 25 years old. It's the same as arts and crafts, in human rights, in other, except for hiking, wherein this is the only thing where you have more 26 to 35 years old. And in film, we actually have the same number. So take note of the same number because you are going to use that later on. All right, so now that you know the general idea, you have to group similar data together. So for example, more number, less number, or small difference, or big difference. Why is it important for you to group similar data together? Especially if you have more items in your key. It's important because you have to explain those data. Okay, so once you made those groupings, you have to describe the graph using the groupings you made. All right, so maybe the first group, you have more 18 to 25-year-olds, clubs wherein you have more 18 to 25-year-olds. So the second group, the clubs where you have more 26 to 35 years old. All right, the third group, it can either be with a big difference like this, it's showing big difference, or maybe the small difference. So here, the difference is quite small when it comes to 26 to 35-year-olds and 18 to 25 years old. So this is quite a small difference. All right. And the last one, you have to look for the striking information. So what is the striking information? It is the data in your graph showing the same number or same amount. That's why I told you earlier, take note of this one because it's showing the same number. This is a striking information. All right. So I have here a template. It's just like a guide help you in writing comparison and contrast. So we have here like your introduction and we have here your body of your paragraph. So we have here the pie chart, bar graph, table, depends on what data you have. It can either be a pie chart, a table, a graph, so a line graph. So you have to just take a look at what is presented to you. And then you have here your verb of presentation. So you can either use shows, presents information, illustrates. So it depends what you want to use. Just make sure that you'll not be using the same verb that's used in the question paper. Okay, then what is in the vertical axis? So if you remember here, what's this? The number of members, right? And then key, what's the key? So we have here two age range, no? Horizontal axis, different clubs from year, if given. Sometimes year is not given because sometimes in comparison and contrast, we are talking about averages. So if it's averages, sometimes they don't really provide the year. If the year is given, then you have to mention the year. If not, then you can leave it. So in general, this is your general idea. In general, we can see that. So what is your general idea then? Looking in more detail, the chart, graph, or whatever it is shows that. So what can you see? What is the first group? You remember I told you that you need to put them in groups. So what is the first group? After that, the second thing, the second group that you created. The final point, the third group that you created. All right. Now, one striking information in this chart is that both, now you have your two data that's the same. Okay, both, what is this? Both age ranges, you can say both age ranges had the same number of members. Not put here. Instead, we put the name of the club because here we have club. All right, so we have here film club. About, so what's the amount? All right. Do not forget to use language of approximation. If you have bar chart or pie chart or line graph, because it's not exact. If you have a table, of course, you don't need to put language of approximation because you have the exact amount, the exact number. But if you have a bar chart or pie chart or line graph, maybe you have to use the language of approximation because we don't know the exact numbers. All right, so here's the graph again, and this is the model answer. All right, so the reference that I used in this lesson is Foundation IELTS Masterclass, the student's book by Nick Thorner and Louis Rogers. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You may also visit my website, teacherdonna.tk, for more information and more lessons about IELTS. Thank you so much. Bye bye.